Atal'Dazar returns as one of the new dungeons for Mythic Plus in Season 3. The dungeon will start with a 30-minute timer, so as long as you complete the dungeon within that window, you will upgrade your key. When you first zone in, you'll have multiple routes that you can take. For the sake of this guide, we'll start off by making our way to the first boss, Rezan. Jump down into the sacrificial pits, and around this whole arena, you'll see bone piles scattered. During the encounter, if you or Rezan stand on these piles, it will awaken a reanimated raptor. Tanks will need to pick up aggro on these mobs if they do spawn, but do be careful as they can quickly overwhelm your tank. Rezan will cast Terrifying Visage, fearing anybody in line of sight of the boss for 6 seconds. It can be dispelled if players are struck, but tanks should position the boss near the outside pillars of the room so the rest of your group can line the boss easily. Shortly after he casts this fear, he will chase a player with Pursuit for 12 seconds. This player should run away from the boss while avoiding the bone piles so you don't get devoured by Rezan. Tanks will suffer a Serrated Teeth debuff, increasing their physical damage taken, so you'll need to save mitigation for after this ability. Lastly, you'll want to attack this boss from its sides, as his tail will deal damage to you and knock you back. If you chose to veer left at the start of the dungeon, you'll encounter many different mobs. Juggernauts will cast Fanatic Rage that you'll need to interrupt. Failing that, Soothe classes can remove the damage buff they gain. They'll also target the furthest player away from them and charge at them with Merciless Assault, dealing damage to anybody within 8 yards, so when fighting these, make sure that you're spread. Confessors cast Mending Word that needs to be kicked in order to stop the heal, as well as their Bwonsomdi's Mantle cast, which spawns a massive golden zone, making enemies within this shield immune to crowd control effects and interrupts. Failing to kick this cast will mean your tank has to kite the rest of the mobs outside of the zone. The only mob you won't be able to kite out is the Augur, as they chain cast Wildfire at random players, dealing heavy single target damage. These casts can be interrupted with spare kicks, but make sure you save a kick for Fiery Enchant. This channel spawns infinite fiery puddles that land nearby. They are dodgeable, but it's in your best interest to just kick this cast. You'll soon encounter a Colossus after this. This mob is a priority target, as if mobs die near the Colossus, it will get bolstered, healing it and increasing its damage through a purgeable buff. Priestesses will target a random player with Transfusion. The player will need to soak a nearby tainted blood pool so the transfusion deals damage instead of healing the priestess. Priestess Alun'za. During this fight, corrupted gold orbs will travel randomly throughout the room, so make sure to dodge these. They will reduce your damage by 30% for 10 seconds if struck. The boss will apply a molten gold debuff to random players during the encounter. Healers should dispel this ASAP to avoid the player taking damage. Alun'za will buff herself with Gilded Claws, a 150% damage increase for 12 seconds that tanks will need to deal with provided you have no class in your group that can dispel it from the boss. Throughout the fight, the boss will spawn tainted blood pools around the arena that will need to soak just before the transfusion cast at 100% energy to avoid healing the boss and instead deal massive damage to her. Only one player can soak one pool, so try and position yourself as a group so that you don't steal each other's pools. To make things a bit trickier, the boss will also spawn a Spirit of Gold at the top of the throne. This ad will slowly walk towards and soak these puddles if left untouched. Players should hard swap to this ad and kill it before it eats one of your puddles, and note that you can CC the ad with slows or stuns to make it easier to kill before it reaches the puddles. Towards the end of the boss fight, you may opt to leave this ad CC'd at the top so you can finish off the boss. Upon defeating Alun'za, you'll head down the staircase. Be careful for the masks on either side shooting out deadly fire. The eyes light up just before it starts spewing, so keep an eye out for that. Here we'll encounter more Augurs but also Honor Guards. These mobs will just deal extra tank damage through their Fervent Strike. Toxic Saurids will leap to random players with Leaping Thrash and deal AoE damage to players within 3 yards. Stack relatively close here to keep up AoE, but don't stand on top of each other so that you get one shot. Feasting Sky Screamers will cast Terrifying Screech, which must be interrupted. This fear lasts 6 seconds, so you can probably bet you'll ninja pull if it does go off. In the middle of the bridge, you'll encounter Dynamancer Kisho and her 2 Direhorns, Talonja and Monzumi. It is actually possible to skip this patrol by hugging the sides of the bridge, but if you need the extra percent for enemy forces, here's what they do. Kisho will repeatedly cast Quick Shot on the tank and then Deadeye Aim on a random non-tank player. These casts cannot be avoided. She will also cast Dynamite, applying a magic buff to her companions, healing them over 10 seconds, kick or purge this buff. Talonja will cast Frenzied Charge at a random player, dealing heavy damage and stunning all players in the pathway for 2 seconds. Monzumi will frequently channel Wild Thrash, dealing moderate physical damage to all players within 8 yards. After clearing this middle area, Witch Doctors will spam cast Venom Blast on random players. This can be kicked, but you'll want to make sure you have kick spare for the Unstable Hex cast. This applies a 5-second curse to a player, polymorphing them and attempting to jump to any players within 8 yards, so stay spread. Shield Bearers channel Bulwark of Juju, reducing incoming damage by 90%. Either move enemies away from this barrier or use hard CC to stop them channeling this cast. Stuns or displacement abilities will work. They will also cast Shield Bash on the tank or any nearby player if the tank is not close. dealing heavy damage and interrupting the player for 2 seconds. Stalkers travel in pairs of 2 up and down the stairs in stealth. If they open up on players first, they will stun the player for 2 seconds. Try and use AoE to get the stalkers out of stealth before engaging them. They have a passive buff named Venom Tip Blade, causing their melee attacks to occasionally deal extra nature damage. This passive becomes much more deadly when the stalkers also cast Venom Fang Strike, increasing the target's nature damage taken by 100% for 8 seconds. This is classed as a poison, so certain classes can dispel it. Reanimated honor guards are accompanied by reanimation totems that you'll need to prioritize killing. This totem constantly heals the guards for a large amount of their health. As soon as the totem dies, the honor guard will then start pulsing massive AoE to the group. Nuke down this mob next before the outgoing damage gets too much. The next boss we face is Volkaal. He'll toxic leap at random players, dealing big magic damage and knocking players back, so avoid this massive swirly. Throughout the fight, he'll also cast Noxious Stench, which players will need to kick ASAP to avoid taking high damage and receiving a stacking disease dot. This can quickly get out of hand. In the arena, there are 3 reanimation totems that constantly heal the boss while they're active, making any damage on Volkaal completely irrelevant while they stand. These totems need to be killed ASAP to phase the boss, however upon reaching 0 health they begin to cast Reanimate, healing the totem to full unless all the totems reach 0 HP at the same time. Then it will phase the encounter, allowing you to attack the boss. The idea here is to nuke all the totems down equally so they phase at the same time. Once phased, the boss will continually drop toxic around players, filling up the room quick, so you should stack up and move around the boss room together. Once Volkaal is dead, head back towards the middle of the bridge and then you'll head up towards the last boss, Yazma. She constantly sends purple spiders down the stairs that need to be dodged or you'll take massive upfront damage and get slowed. Yazma will cast Skewer on your tank, dealing large upfront physical damage. Use active mitigation here. Racking Pain needs to be interrupted at all times. This cast deals high initial damage and leaves a 6-second curse dot on the player. During the fight, Yazma will summon spiders around where players are positioned that travel in random directions. Coming into contact with these will trigger an explosion, dealing damage and slowing you if stood in the puddle. Occasionally, some of these spiders become empowered, growing in size and gaining an aura. For the duration, the spider will fixate on a random player, so again, avoid being struck. Yazma's signature ability is Soul Rend. All non-tank players should stack up away from the boss, and a few seconds later, copies of yourself will spawn that you need to nuke down before they reach Yazma. Otherwise, they explode, inflicting a 20-second dot to your whole group that stacks. These adds also reflect a portion of damage taken back to the attacker, so healers should be prepared to heal their DPS in this phase. You can slow or stun or use helpful CC to prevent them reaching the boss here. But that's it for this boss, and that wraps up Atal'Dazar in Mythic Plus. If this guide did help you or a friend out, then please feel free to drop a like down below and subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.